We're all going to hyperanalyze what Caleb Williams does in his first game this season, but how he performs is going to teach us a lot more about Ben Johnson than it does about Caleb Williams.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And on the show today, I want to go through what the Chicago Bears need to do to win this game and why so much more of that is going to reflect Ben Johnson than Caleb Williams. It doesn't mean that Caleb Williams isn't responsible for any of his good or bad play in this game, but this matchup in particular will test Ben Johnson just as much as the quarterback, and the whole reason Ben Johnson was brought in here was to support the quarterback. So the quarterback's performance is going to be so strongly tied to the head coach that we're going to learn a lot about what Ben Johnson is and isn't capable of in a lot of different areas. But we'll also take a little time and talk about what we want to see Dennis Allen do to attack J.J. McCarthy and slow down Kevin O'Connell's offense. But for me, this is a bigger picture conversation. It's not just about the Vikings in week one, but it is certainly accentuated by the Vikings in week one. But my whole point here is that Ben Johnson was brought in here to make Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears offense successful by whatever means necessary. And so if Caleb Williams, and by extension the offense, is not successful, even right away, that will reflect more poorly on Ben Johnson than it will Caleb Williams. And I think the reverse is true as well, that if the offense is sharp from the get-go, it will also reflect more positively on Ben Johnson than on Caleb Williams, because the expectations are really all on Ben Johnson at this point. Like, yes, we need to see Caleb Williams get better, but the whole way for Caleb Williams to get better is through and because of Ben Johnson and what Ben Johnson's going to do with Caleb Williams. And I think there really shouldn't be any excuses for Ben Johnson, whereas I think there can still be excuses for Caleb Williams. Because for Caleb, the excuses, if you will, are like, well, it's his first game running Ben Johnson's offense, so of course he's going to make some mistakes in there. Of course, we should expect he's not going to be perfect, and that's reasonable and fine and well. And yeah, Olamide Zaccheaus is a new receiver. Colson Loveland is a new receiver. Like, he's still getting on the same page with some of these guys and still finalizing and maximizing the timing of how this offense and the operation is going to go. Like, we don't necessarily need to expect Caleb Williams to be a well-oiled machine, but we should expect that Ben Johnson is going to put Caleb Williams and this offense in the best position to be successful, whatever that's going to look like. And that's going to look different in the first game than it does in the sixth game. But it's Ben Johnson's job to craft a game plan that Caleb Williams can handle. And if we see an offense out there that Caleb Williams is having trouble handling, then that reflects poorly on Ben Johnson for not having prepared his quarterback well enough. Like, I think there's specific things that might be uniquely attributed to one or the other. If Caleb Williams overthrows an open receiver and is intercepted, that's not necessarily going to be Ben Johnson's fault. But at the same time, Ben Johnson should be scheming plays for Caleb Williams to hit receivers he's comfortable throwing to on routes he's comfortable throwing to with timing that he's comfortable making, and not be asking him to do things that he isn't capable of doing right now. Like, it's a separate set of expectations. We think Ben Johnson should be a smart enough coach. Like, this is why they made him the head coach, that even if somehow Caleb Williams turns out to be a bad quarterback, Ben Johnson should be able to have some offensive success, even with a quarterback who's not great. I mean, there's an exception. I mean, he can't be horrible. But Caleb Williams could be no better than we saw last season as a rookie. He could make zero improvement. And Ben Johnson is supposed to be the head coach and offensive coordinator, play caller, who can take that and make a successful offense with it. Like, his ability, his pedigree as a coach should not be, he needs an elite quarterback to be successful. I don't think Jared Goff was an elite quarterback, but he certainly got better play out of Jared Goff. But like, if you're the genius offensive coordinator, you should be able to drum up an offense that even a struggling quarterback can succeed with. You should be able to drum up an offense that even a struggling offensive line can find ways to be successful. That doesn't mean you have to score 35 points a game with a struggling offensive line or a struggling quarterback, but you should be able to get by. Right? We've seen previous Bears coaches struggle, and we always have this question of like, well, is it because Mitch Trubisky was bad, or because the coaching staff was bad? Or is it because Justin Fields wasn't good enough, or because the coaching staff wasn't good enough? And is it because Caleb Williams wasn't good enough, or because the coaching staff wasn't good enough? We can't have that question about Ben Johnson as an offensive play caller. He was hired because he is supposed to be uniquely good enough. And that doesn't mean he can make a Super Bowl offense out of nothing, but we've clearly seen talent from Caleb Williams. He's not going to be a worse quarterback than he was last year. He's clearly a starting caliber NFL quarterback at a very, very floor minimum. Ben Johnson should be the smart enough coach he's been hired to be and is paid well enough to be the smart enough coach that even if he gets average quarterback play, the Bears should be able to put up 20 plus points, because he should be able to scheme up route concepts and passing plays that even an average quarterback can get the hands in the playmakers and let those playmakers make plays after the catch. He should be able to scheme up a running game that an average quarterback can hand it off to that running back, and the running game on the offensive line should be able to help carry that quarterback. Like, it feels to me, almost regardless of how good or bad Caleb Williams is, Ben Johnson is here because he's supposed to be the offensive coach who is smart enough to kind of make it work with anything. Now, there's a difference between how good the offense can be. The idea is that if Caleb Williams is average, then Ben Johnson's offense might be average. And if Caleb Williams is great, then Ben Johnson's offense should be great. But there's no outcome in there where Ben Johnson's offense is allowed to be bad. Like, if Caleb is average and the offense is bad, then that's a really bad negative reflection on Ben Johnson, because he's supposed to be the coach that can make it work, even if the talent is a little bit lesser than you need it to be. And he's supposed to be the coach that if you do have great talent, he can be special with. But he's got to be able to do it in both ends. And so even in week one against the Vikings, where you say, well, you know, they're still only in the first early stages of the offense, so Ben Johnson can't do everything he wants to do as a coach yet, so how can you hold him accountable? Well, his job should be scaling down his offense in a way that his players can be successful with even in week one. It's not going to be the full offense, sure, but the expectation of Ben Johnson is that even a lesser version of your offense, like, your job is to make these players successful by whatever means that is. And so he should be adept at knowing what they can handle and maximizing the absolute most out of what they can handle, and not putting too much on their plate, but not putting too little on their plate either. So to me, expectations for Ben Johnson are sky high, whereas expectations for Caleb Williams are high, but I don't need perfection from Caleb. I need perfection from Ben Johnson. That's what he's here for. That's what he's hired for, especially against a defensive coordinator like Brian Flores that is going to test your offense in ways that maybe other defenses won't be so aggressive. So we'll take a look at some of the things Ben Johnson needs to do for his offense to be successful against Brian Flores, and in doing so, showing us that he is fully capable of handling those things outside of the Detroit Lions organization. Next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You make decisions every single day, but on PrizePicks, being right means cashing in. With football back, PrizePicks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. So they've got a max discount for Lamar Jackson this weekend of 0.5 passing yards. You pick whether he'll have more or less than 0.5 passing yards. So if he has 1 passing yard, you're hitting the more. Already one of your 2 to 6 picks is ready to go. You make one more pick, and you're going to get some money in there. You can pick Caleb Williams' passing yards, DeAndre Swift's rushing yards, and so much more. Plus other sports as well. If you want to add in some non-football picks in there, it's a lot of fun. Download the PrizePicks app today and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. Locked On Bears is also brought to you by our friends at Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive. And that's what makes Mazda stand out, because they go beyond safety, style, and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. Of course, Mazda knows safety. It's won more 2025 IIHS top safety picks and awards than anyone else. But you can feel that performance in the movement you get behind the wheel. Smooth handling, intuitive controls, and standard all-wheel drive in every crossover SUV. So whether it's a quick drive to practice or a weekend road trip, Mazda makes even everyday drives feel special. It's the small details that make the big plays. And just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda. Move and be moved. So Ben Johnson's responsibility is immense. Not only just to craft an early season game plan that the players can handle, but also a Brian Flores game plan that can both be enough, that can be something that the players can handle in the first game of the season, but also have answers for the blitz. And like that's the number one thing I think Ben Johnson needs to be able to do here is he's here to give Caleb answers, all the answers to the test, so that Caleb doesn't have to figure it out himself and scramble around and try and make plays, that the offense should make Caleb Williams' job easy at every turn. And there's going to be occasions when it doesn't, and that's when you need Caleb to make plays and be the creator that he can be. But generally, 75% of the game should be, in theory, dialed up and easy enough for Caleb Williams to go through his progression, drop back, knows his timing. Ball's got to be out here if it's going to this receiver, there if it's going to that receiver at this time, or check down, throw away. Like, he's got to have all the answers to the test, especially when, okay, blitz is coming. Where's it coming from? What are my options when that blitz is coming? All of that has to be on Caleb Williams' plate week one. And it's been Ben Johnson's job to make sure that throughout training camp, OTAs, the preseason, that they have been building up to this point that Caleb Williams is comfortable, that you didn't put so much on his plate that now he's not ready because he's had so much to kind of juggle with. But you've had enough on his plate that you can still give him all the answers to the test, and he'll know how to apply what you actually offer up for him. So against the Vikings and Brian Flores, right? Extra pass rushers are going to be coming, and there's different answers you can take to that. There's kind of two main approaches to an aggressive blitzing defense like Brian Flores. Either you leave extra guys in there and you try and block everybody up to then give your quarterback time to find whatever remaining receivers are getting open, because you've got route runner like Rome Odunze, who you know has a knack for getting open. You've got speed in DJ Moore and Rome Odunze that can get open, or in DJ Moore and Luther Burden that can get open. Heck, Olamide Zacchaeus is a good route runner as well. Colston Loveland can get open. Like, you've got guys, so whoever's running out on routes should be able to get open if you give them enough time. And if you leave in Cole Kmet to pick up a blocker or to pick up a blitzer here, and you leave in DeAndre Swift to pick up a blitzer here, and you can, if you block all 7 other pass rushers, then you're going to have 3 other receivers running routes to get open, and you trust these guys to be able to get open, and then Caleb Williams can find them with time in the pocket. Like one of Ben Johnson's ways to answer this is blocking scheme. Okay, we're going to slide the protection to the left side to help Braxton Jones, but then have the tight end on the right side and move the running back to the right side and pick up anything coming from that side. So now you've got Caleb Williams has sort of a half the line is shifting left, and then you've got extra blockers going to the right to pick up whatever's deficiencies there. Caleb should be able to have a full 5-step drop, hitch, read all 3 receivers, and find the open guy. Like, that's one solution you can have to the blitz. The downside there is that everybody's got to actually execute those blocks. Like, you can leave 7 guys in to pick up 7 pass rushers, but if any of those 7 guys loses, say like Braxton Jones at left tackle or Jonah Jackson at right guard, or even how good of a pass blocker is DeAndre Swift? He's trying to pick up a corner. Can you trust all 7 guys will be in the right position and make their blocks? Well, then you've got a real solution there. But sometimes that might not work. But the upside is that you can still run, downfield big plays and trust your receivers to get open and have Caleb Williams operate more of a real feeling passing game there. The other alternative is to say, screw that. There's no way we're going to be able to block all of these guys every single time perfectly. There's going to be too many times when we're trying to pick up the blitz, but we miss a guy because the blitz is a fancy blitz where somebody comes looping around from one end and their blitz is kind of a good counter to our pass blocking, and so no one's there to pick up the guy and someone's coming free, or just that we can't sustain those blocks long enough for those longer plays to develop. And so your other alternative is, instead of trying to block all these guys, let's just get rid of the ball quick enough before they can get home. And that's generally what Brian Flores' defense in the past has kind of wanted teams to do, is essentially like force you to just check down, throw it behind the line of scrimmage, and then they'll come up and tackle you and trust that you can't convert first downs consistently by throwing short in the quick passing game to neutralize the blitz that way. But that's supposed to be where Ben Johnson makes the difference and where he has had a lot of success against Minnesota Vikings defenses when he was with Detroit. And there's no guarantee then that instantly translates to Chicago. But I do think it gives you some good reason to be optimistic about this Bears offense not having too much trouble with the blitz. 1, Caleb Williams was pretty good against the Vikings. 2, Ben Johnson was pretty good against the Vikings. You now put them together, in theory, they should be able to both be pretty good against the Vikings. But the difference for Ben Johnson there is like where you're throwing that quick pass to. Right? It's Ben Johnson's job to analyze and determine and predict when Brian Flores is blitzing. What is the coverage going to be like behind it? And that's something Brian Flores has done a really good job of adapting and trying to be unpredictable in. And we've seen, this is one of the more like in the weeds football trends of the last couple seasons, is how teams are blitzing and what coverages are they doing behind blitzes. Teams like Brian Flores last year went to more of like what they call like a cover 4 blitz, where like they'll still keep 4 guys deep. It's kind of it's more nuanced than we need to get in the podcast, but like whether they're going to be a man-to-man when you blitz, or whether it's going to be cover 2 when you blitz, or whether they're going to be 3 deep when you blitz. And knowing based on when he blitzes, this is the coverage we're going to get behind it, that tells you what routes to look for and throw to beat those coverages. Because when he blitzes, he's going to have fewer guys back there. First and foremost, there's an advantage right away. There's not going to be as many coverage defenders. It's going to be more space for receivers to get open. If it's going to be man-to-man coverage, then you're going to be looking for a lot of things working over the middle of the field. A shallow crossing route, or a middle or deep crossing route, a deep in route, the dig route, maybe a levels concept of multiple players working from the outside across the middle of the field, because it's really hard for man coverage defenders to trail that far down the field. And if you can give Caleb a guy running horizontally, you put him out in front of him and DJ Moore could just catch it and run away from the guy who's already been chasing him. That's how you take a blitz play and a 2-yard pass that becomes a 10-yard pass, and all of a sudden that becomes a lot harder for the Brian Flores defense to keep blitzing you, because you can just gash them behind it. So they're not going to just sit in man coverage every time they blitz. They're going to be in zone and say, all right, now we're going to have guys waiting for the receivers you throw it to. And then it kind of depends on what type of zone they're in. If they're in a cover 3 zone, can you throw a quick ball up the seam? Like the pass we saw Caleb Williams throw against the Buffalo Bills in the preseason to, I believe it was Colston Loveland, the first completion to Colston Loveland, like right up the seam, 3 deep coverage is like, that's going to be open quickly. If Colston Loveland is fast enough that Caleb Williams can 3-step drop, hitch, float it into Colston Loveland, like right in that area between zone defenders, that can be a quick hitting passing play that is still kind of vertical, gets the ball quickly and gashes the defense there, right? It all depends on what the Vikings are putting behind the blitz, and that's kind of Ben Johnson. That is Ben Johnson and this coaching staff's job, to have those answers for Caleb Williams and say, all right, this is how they're generally going to do it, so we're going to give you these routes to throw to when those blitzes are coming. And all Caleb Williams has to do is snap it and then be in rhythm and on time, and that shouldn't be too much to ask. And Ben Johnson should have put Caleb Williams in a position where he can execute and do that because that's been Ben Johnson's job all along. Then you add in the running game as a big weapon to slow down the blitz as well and play action off of that to try and confuse them. And you can build yourself a little game plan here to beat Brian Flores' defense and for this offense to look pretty good. Then it just falls on Dennis Allen's side of the ball to make sure that J.J. McCarthy's not a breakout week one quarterback and that they've got answers for what Kevin O'Connell is going to throw at them. So we'll take a look at some of the things we should expect to see Dennis Allen do on Monday night next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more time every time you order, the Bears also saw players deliver when it mattered most. And I think specifically of Braxton Jones winning this left tackle battle and keep getting healthier and closer to 100% every single day. When the pressure was on in this left tackle battle, Braxton Jones came through. No hesitation, no delay. And you know that this has been something that's been building up over time. And just like Braxton Jones came through, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. And you can stack it up all season, and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday and keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. So we can kind of quickly digest what the offense needs to do against Brian Flores' defense. Conversely, Kevin O'Connell's offense is a little bit more complex from like a game plan strategy approach concept. We know that he's going to be malleable and find different ways to attack the weaknesses he sees in the Chicago Bears defense. And so I think from Dennis Allen's perspective, a lot of this is going to depend on the health of both Jalen Johnson, but also TJ Edwards, which is maybe the growing injury concern for this Bears defense. So technically on Thursday, the Bears held the first practice of the week, but it was a walkthrough practice because they don't play till Monday. And so it's sort of like an estimated injury report and practice availability, even though they didn't actually practice. But generally, these tend to be pretty accurate and reflective of like, had they practiced what it actually would. You don't usually see something that is estimated and turns out to be way totally wrong the next day. And the concern is that Thursday, TJ Edwards did not practice with a hamstring injury that he suffered, I think, last week or earlier this week, and has missed a good chunk of practice since suffering that hamstring injury. The good news is that Jalen Johnson was limited, but he lists calf and groin injuries, which is a doubling down there, and also not being a full participant 4 days before the actual game, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 4 days before the actual game is not a good sign for a player who missed, the last month and a half before this game and now is only limited 4 days before this game. Like the strength of my cornerbacks and linebackers, if I'm Dennis Allen, is going to kind of dictate a lot. Like, will I have Jalen Johnson to match up with Justin Jefferson, or am I juggling Nahshon Wright and Tyreek Stevenson there? That changes how I might approach this game. Am I going to have TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds in the middle of my defense, or is it going to be Noah Sewell and Tremaine Edmonds in the middle of my defense? Or I guess maybe Ruben Hippolyte and Tremaine Edmonds? But you can already guess that if you're Kevin O'Connell, you're looking at this Bears defense and saying, if Noah Sewell is in the middle of this field, I am going to throw the ball at him every chance I possibly can get. TJ Hawkinson is going to get 10 targets and 100 yards and a couple of touchdowns because we're going to take their slow linebacker, who's not that great in coverage, and we're going to put our dominant tight end against him, and we're going to take advantage of that every single play. And I think Kevin O'Connell is also similarly looking and saying, Nahshon Wright looked really bad in the preseason. So if Jalen Johnson's not out there, on every play, we're going to find which side of the field Nahshon Wright is playing on, and we are going to move Justin Jefferson over there. And we're going to make sure that that guy is as close to Justin Jefferson on every play possible, and then throw it to Justin Jefferson 15 times and get him over 100 yards. It's not a complicated mystery of what Kevin O'Connell might want to do. Any smart coach is going to find your weakness and attack it with their best strength. So Dennis Allen needs to try and do something similar with his defense against the Vikings offense. I would like to see someone like Grady Jarrett, the veteran defensive tackle, going up against the Minnesota Vikings rookie left guard, Donovan Jackson, who by all accounts is a quality rookie first-round pick for sure. But I'll take the veteran savviness of Grady Jarrett pulling one over on a rookie as a pretty advantageous matchup there. I know their left tackle, Christian Darrisaw, is also coming off of injury, and it's not certain for sure whether he'll play. So certainly if they have a backup at left tackle or just their version of Braxton Jones, just not a fully healthy left tackle, you can bet you're going to put Montez Sweat over there as much as you possibly can and try and isolate those two guys to let your best edge rusher go against potentially their weaker of the two offensive tackles. Like things like that will go a long way. We heard yesterday on the Locked On Bears crossover podcast with Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings. Luke Braun thinks the Vikings will not try and hide J.J. McCarthy the way that Michigan tried to hide J.J. McCarthy. He thinks Kevin O'Connell is going to come out passing early and often. And so I don't know, because I think our initial instinct is right. Okay, first year starting quarterback, what you want to do is shut down the Vikings running game and make J.J. McCarthy beat you with his arm, right? Like that's in theory what the sort of the baseline first instinct would say. But I don't think the Vikings are going to make that as large of a priority as we might think they will. It doesn't mean they're going to ignore the running game with Aaron Jones. I mean, Aaron Jones had a couple of big games against the Chicago Bears last season, 106 yards in that first matchup. And in the second one had 86 and a touchdown on 18 carries. Like they've been able to run the ball successfully against the Bears, but they also threw the ball 35 plus times in both of those matchups. J.J. McCarthy is going to throw the ball a lot in this game. And we're going to see how good he is at it. I mean, we just don't know. But if I'm Dennis Allen, I'm not as worried. I mean, you don't want to ignore the run or not shut down the run, right? But you can't put such an emphasis on make him beat you with his arm, because the Vikings are going to want to beat you with his arm. They're going to want that Hockenson versus Sewell matchup or that Justin Jefferson versus Nahshon Wright matchup. And they'll say, yeah, McCarthy might not be perfect, but we trust our ability to get him the most favorable matchups, that he doesn't have to be pinpoint accurate. Justin Jefferson will make the play. Doesn't have to be pinpoint accurate. TJ Hockenson, he'll make the play, and that they can live off of those mismatches well enough to win this game and trust that their defense can slow down the Bears offense, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if I'm Dennis Allen, my emphasis is less on stopping the run, which you got to do, of course, but I'm putting more of my energy towards disguising coverages and messing with J.J. McCarthy's eyes in the passing game. Yes, they've got one-on-one matchups that they're going to try and get, but if you're not in man coverage, you're not always going to get Nahshon Wright versus Justin Jefferson or Sewell versus Hockenson. And maybe you call his own coverage that's more of a pattern match coverage, so J.J. McCarthy thinks it's man coverage, and then at the last minute, oh, actually, Noah Sewell jumps off the tight end and goes somewhere else, and here comes Tremaine Edmonds, or here comes Jaquan Brisker, or here comes Kevin Byard in a different coverage, but ball's already on its way out, and there's an interception or a pass breakup, right? Like the more you can mess with J.J. McCarthy's eyes and make things after the snap look differently than they look before the snap, the less success they're going to be able to have with that passing game, and the more you're going to be able to hide some of your potential mismatches on defense. So I'm again left feeling like we're going to learn a lot about Dennis Allen in this game too. How well can you mask deficiencies on your defense? Are you a coach who you got to have really solid players at all three levels, or can he effectively scheme his way to a better pass rush if that group struggles, and better coverage if that group has injuries? And not that he has to be a miracle worker who can't. Every coach needs some kind of talent, but I think we'll learn a lot about Dennis Allen's ability to make up for some talent deficiencies with how he approaches this game in particular, because it's a rookie quarterback. You should be able to pull one over on him and confuse him in ways that you might not be able to confuse, more experienced quarterbacks. Like Jared Goff next week is not a quarterback you're going to confuse all that much. He's seen pretty much everything, and he's had Ben Johnson in his ear for 3 years. Like the fooling him with stuff isn't going to be as effective of a weapon as it is against J.J. McCarthy. So if you can make McCarthy hesitate, maybe hold on to the ball a little bit longer, that gives your coverage guys more time to recover and your pass rush more time to get home, and that's how you can talk yourself into a Chicago Bears victory. I have my doubts, as we talked about a little bit on yesterday's podcast. If I had to bet my money on it, I'd lean Bears loss, but I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a little bit ugly. It's going to be week one. And I also think we need to make sure we're not overreacting to week one because weird things happen in week one. And whether the Bears win or lose is not necessarily going to be reflective of how they'll play the rest of the season. Because every year in the NFL, good teams lose, bad teams win the first week. But over the course of the next 5 or 6 weeks, you actually learn who's good and who's not. And that's why we're going to be breaking down this Bears team in depth all season long right here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're looking for a second listen today, go learn more about this Bears opponent and go check out the Locked On Vikings podcast to really make sure you are ready for Monday Night Football, because then we'll be back with another podcast for you Monday morning and another opportunity every single day for you to bear down.